Hi everyone, welcome to the Startup Operator Podcast. I'm Roshan Karyappa, and today I'm thrilled to be speaking with Ravi Shankar, who is the CEO and co-founder of Aim High Consulting, which is best known as the PR firm of choice for the likes of Blackbuck, Flipkart, Ola, Swiggy, Byju's, Livspace, and a bunch of other eminent startups. Ravi is also a teacher and a writer. He teaches communication at some of the leading colleges and institutes in India and has authored over 600 published articles and 6 books. Best of all, if you're privileged enough to know him as a mentor, as I have been fortunate to, then you'll know that he's one of the wisest and most generous people that you will meet. So without further ado, good morning, Ravi. How are you?
Good morning. Yeah. Thanks,
Thank you
Kari.
so
For the
much.
pleasure of knowing you has indeed been mine. Really my honor and pleasure and privilege to be part of this.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you so much for making time on such a fine, lovely Sunday morning.
Yeah.
So, Ravi, I just want to, as I was looking at your career, I just realized that you crossed the 2 decade mark sometime
Yeah.
recently, right?
Yeah.
And I have been thinking a lot about longevity lately,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Uh, I wonder if you can give us some advice on, how to stay relevant, how to stay sane, how to retain your passion for those 2 decades and maybe three or four, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. So the only way for career longevity is when it doesn't feel like work each day you do it. Number
Yeah.
one. Number two, if you are doing a new thing every day. Okay, in my case, considering the kind of industry that I'm in, I've mostly been doing a new thing every day. Okay, so if you mentioned a few clients that we work with, there are maybe 500 others that deserve to be mentioned too, who have ensured that I have stayed for 2 decades and still preserved sanity, in in being a communicator. Because every challenge that is thrown at you, is new. It might sound very cliched, because I have heard people who are in other professions also say something like this. But in our profession, you would know this as well as I would, Karyappa. you know each day you wake up to a new challenge, never a dull day.
Yeah.
Because each of these would belong to a different industry category. There are no templates, no formats mostly. And what they ask of you is very different. Okay, the category is different, the ask from you is different, and you cannot propose the same solution each time that you go back to them. So it keeps you on your toes. You cannot stop thinking for a minute, and that is what perhaps keeps you agile and active, and there is no time to think of some other career, or there's no time to get bored. If you don't have time to get bored, then years fly by, decades fly by, and in my case, 2 decades have flown by, and add a year more to that. And but never a boring day, never a dull day in our lives, I can assure you. If you are an active communicator, and if you are not doing just the templatized stuff. When I say templatized stuff, you identify yourself with a small niche, just do only that, then chances are that after a while fatigue sets in. When I say fatigue, the fatigue of doing repeatedly the same thing, that could potentially set in. But not when you are dealing with a new client category each day. And we have had the great fortune of dealing with over 200 categories, more than 500 clients,
Wow.
and more than 200 categories. Okay, every new category that has come to the fore, let's say in the last 12 years, 13 years, actually 13 years of aim high, have I'd be surprised if we have missed any category. We have had the pleasure and privilege of working with either the number one or number two in pretty much every business category. So now tell me, where is the time to get bored? Where is the time to think of, what, maybe I'm spending too many years here and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, in a sense, uh, this whole communication becomes the purpose of life when you are as involved in it as some of us are.
Yeah. No, I
Yeah,
think if you find your passion in life, if you're fortunate enough to do that, I think work becomes play.
absolutely.
And especially in your case, I mean, you work at the intersection of marketing and media, which
Yeah,
are again two very interesting
yeah,
arenas as well, right? So
yeah,
yeah, I mean, someone I know said that the fact that you'll be solving problems is a constant in life. Problems, challenges, whatever, you just have to find bigger, better, greater challenges each day,
yeah,
and that's how you keep yourself motivated.
absolutely.
Also, I think it also has to do with the fact that you work with a lot of startups, right? Because when you work with a startup, there is no precedence, as you mentioned. Everything is a sort of a unique new challenge. I mean, you may bring in some
Correct.
templates and principles,
Yeah.
but the fact that you work with startups definitely, I mean, adds the juice to your career as well.
Yeah. Yeah, you couldn't be more right. Startups, especially startups in India, are full of effervescent energy, and that energy is truly infectious. If somebody is debating the same thing with you every day, like I said, there is chance that you could be fatigued by it. But if somebody is talking a new thing to you each day, and not just merely in terms of perspective, mind you, but if they are trying to solve a new problem each
Yeah,
time, and if that is what you need to communicate, then it is inherently interesting.
yeah. So let's back up a little bit and talk about your journey to founding Aim High.
Yeah,
As I understand, I mean, you were VP at Brandcom, right?
yeah,
What prompted you to set up Aim High, and how has that panned out over the years?
yeah. So to put it very simply, it's greed. So yeah. So to be honest, it's easy to say that I envisioned that I will grow a company that will go on to become perhaps the number one in the space of PR for new age businesses and stuff like that. It's very easy to retrofit your story to the success, or whatever you call this, that you have got.
Right.
Because you're asking me to be candid, let me be so. You know, while we have seen a good amount of success, I will still call ourselves. When I say ourselves, both Gopi and Gopi is my co-founder, Gopinath, one of the best brains in PR in this country. He's my guru, mentor, very close friend for the last 25 years. We think like each other, and so I have a great amount of respect and regard for him. Gopi and I, we are accidental entrepreneurs, to be honest. Okay, so we are. This is perhaps one wild bet that we took, which sort of worked out very well. So. Between the two of us, maybe I'm a slightly more natural entrepreneur, perhaps, and the credit for that is to the opportunities that I got at Brandcom, which you mentioned just now. I worked there for 7 years, started as an executive, and when I was coming out of that, I was, like you said, the vice president, heading on practice, and all of that. So while I was at Brandcom, I had the privilege to interact with a lot of businesses, both old world as well as new world businesses, emerging ideas. From let's say something like a BPL of your to something like, let's say, Mindtree, which was an emerging IT company, the likes of Shubhrata Bakshi and people like that, or Kishore Biani, let's say. I'm saying
Mm.
somebody who founded the retail formats in India, multiple
Right.
retail formats in India, the Future Group, from Big Bazaar to Central to what have you, Pantaloon, that full range.
So you're
He
talking about
had
around 2006, 2007 types.
I'm talking about around 2002, 3
Oh, two,
onwards.
three, yeah.
Okay, when Mr. Kishore Biani founded the Pantaloon and which went on to become Future Group later. Big Bazaar and all of that happened in the interim. So from we worked with him from the time that he was absolutely unknown till the time that he became the Badshah of retail
Yeah.
in India. So to look at journeys like that from the side wings is truly inspiring. Or for that matter, from, let's say, 2000, we're looking at some of the ventures that, let's say, someone like VG Siddhartha, a person who passed away almost a year ago, his ventures like Cafe Coffee Day, Way to Wealth, some of those kind of ventures, so that was the the prelude to the beginning of the entrepreneurial journey of India in that sense. So I was extremely excited, like I said, watching all of this from the side wings, and looking at these people come up with extraordinary solutions for unprecedented problems that existed, or sometimes creating a complete greenfield kind of a market. I'm saying all of these kind of experiences sort of, you know, uh, uh, like I said, sometimes kept me awake at night, but sometimes kept me real excited about this whole thing. But never did I think that I would do something like Aim High on my own. Even when I quit a Brandcom in 2007, what inspired confidence in me really was while I was quitting, and while I was saying bye to a lot of clients, many of them offered big fat jobs to me,
Mhm.
including one client saying, hey, why don't you take over and become the head of Indian operations. I mean, a PR guy getting an offer to become the head of Indian operations for a large company. I said, boss,
Right.
I'm saying either there is something right with me or there's something wrong with this guy, and I'll I'll take the bet on something being right with me. And then there came along a few who said, hey, why don't you help us with some PR strategy or communication strategy. And
Right.
then slowly one thing led to the other, and that was the genesis of Aim High consulting in that sense. Purely accidental.
Okay.
I did not start out with a plan. Say, though it is easy today to retrofit and say, yeah, that's what I intended to do.
Right.
Not so. Not so.
Right. So you didn't actually plan to start out Aim High after Brandcom. I mean, so if I understand correctly, it was sort of a consulting practice that evolved into a startup.
Yeah. So, like I said, there were some who were asking for informal help for informal monies, that kind of a thing.
Right.
And then when, I went back to some of them with a plan, the question remained as to who would now go on to execute that plan.
Mm.
Fair question, we thought, and one or two of them pushed us into saying, hey, why don't you execute it, you figure out a team, or you strike up an alliance with somebody else, but you somehow try and execute this for us. So yeah, like I said, Gopi and I, just to give you a little more background, uh, you know uh, we were together doing this small venture called Aim High Learning at that point in time. Okay, and
Mhm.
that's a venture that Gopi was leading, where that's our first venture. That's where we backed Gopi's expertise in the space of learning, actually. So we had
Right.
franchised out what used to be called IMS in those times, test prep company. Actually,
Ah.
we were franchisees for Mysore, Mangalore, Suratkal, some places like that, Udupi and all of that. And we were running that as franchisees of IMS. Okay, basically coaching students
Correct.
to prepare for CAT, GRE, GMAT, that kind of a thing. Because that's the kind of company that Gopi was working with. He was an employee of IMS, and I tried. And when an opportunity came around, I pushed him actually into saying, "Hey, why don't we take up the franchising of this?" And together we took that bet. So when I quit Brandcom, like I said, we keep inspiring each other, and we said, hey, why don't we try something in the space of communication, because that's where my expertise lies. And
Mm.
without thinking twice, Gopi jumped in, and like I told you, he's more natural at communication than I am. He used to be star debater in his times, number one debater in
Yeah.
India, perhaps during college times and stuff like that. He has won the national debate and elocution something like 9 times. Okay,
Wow.
till the time that they chased him away and said, don't come back, and let others get a chance, kind of a thing. So he's very natural at it, and that's when we said, oh, there is an opportunity here, and why don't we convert it? In fact, it became so good that we, in a matter of a year or two, we actually wound up Aim High Learning, even though that was doing reasonably all right. We said we should, put our energy and resources into something that has the potential to really grow big. And we are glad that we took that call and,
Yeah.
got onto full-fledged integrated marketing communication solutions.
Yeah. Not just you. I mean, a lot of startups as well are very glad that you took that call.
Yeah.
Uh, so if you
Thanks that
look
you say. Yeah.
so if you look at the startup story in India, I mean, I kind of see it in three waves actually. So you had the whole dot-com era with, let's say, Naukri, the likes of Sulekha, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Then you have the e-commerce and consumer internet era with Flipkart and Ola. And now I think we're in the SaaS era, right? With Freshworks and ChargeBee and Vimo and all of the rest of them at this point of time.
Yeah.
Uh, in your estimation, what are some things that you've learned, working with startups for PR specifically?
Yeah. So I agree. There have been three eras, if you would like to split it that way, or perhaps more eras, or you can even look at it as one big era of 20 years,
Mhm. Like a natural
where
evolution.
absolutely an evolution which has happened in phases, perhaps. You're speaking of SaaS companies now, but the first time that I heard of SaaS was 17, 18 years ago. We are speaking over let's say Zoom right now, but the first time that I heard of video conferencing online was when I was working for WebEx way back in 2004. Okay, 2004. Imagine the kind of pathetic bandwidths that we had,
Yeah, yeah.
but still one Indian had the courage of conviction. Subra Iyer had the courage of conviction to say, hey, you know what, I'll create perhaps the best video conferencing platform. And he went on to do that. I'm saying this WebEx, which is now owned by Cisco, he thought of that even before this century began. I think he thought of it in 98 or 99.
Phenomenal.
Um, uh, you know, persisted with it, and in 2007, if I'm not wrong, I think he made 3 billions out of it. Okay, so you
Wow.
can't call it an Indian a unicorn, because I think it was instituted elsewhere, but it was an Indian who actually did that. He laid the foundation for all of these kind of SaaS businesses. And let me tell you, while we were working on WebEx, some of the fond theories that they were speaking about then was, how do you build thousands and thousands of SaaS entrepreneurs on a WebEx kind of a platform, who are working remotely from their homes and are
Wow.
still making sense to the world and making money. This was
Way back
16
in
years ago,
2000.
17 years ago, perhaps. that we were having conversations like this. Yes, some of these will take a lot of time for it to get to fruition. I'm saying a lot of constraints,
Yeah.
including constraints in the form of a bandwidth, constraints in the form of the right kind of resources being available to them, governmental support, a whole lot of other factors weigh in. But the truth is that there was never a dearth of ideas in the Indian startup ecosystem, whether it is, like I said earlier, from the times of Cafe Coffee Day. I'm saying you are from Coorg, so you will relate to what
Yeah.
happened with coffee before and after Coffee Day in India. So that is one kind of an enterprise, one
Yeah.
kind of a guy looking at things very, very differently. Or the same Siddharth's,
Yeah.
way to wealth that I spoke to you about. I'm saying earlier, stock trading was seen as some kind of a shady business. I'm saying
Yeah.
for somebody to give it the glam and glitz of a proper wealth management and a financial advisory, the way to wealth did. And then a lot of other banks and the entire BFSI ecosystem doubled down on that, and then made sure that personal finance planning and stuff like that got a lot of respectability. So also with, like I said earlier, retail being thought of in a certain sense, which was actually a precursor to the e-commerce wave. In some sense, the Flipkarts of the world perhaps would not have been able to do what they did if a Kishore Biani did not lay the kind of foundation that he did, where he gave multiple formats, introduced Indians to a lot of products that otherwise they would not have been familiar with, which opened out a bigger marketplace for some of the others. So, like, it's an evolving ecosystem, in a sense, because some people took some bets in some spaces. Somebody else said, "Hey, you know what? If this guy can do such a thing in that space, maybe I can in my own space do," kind of a
Yeah.
thing. So
It's a
I'm
very,
very,
yeah,
yeah,
sorry, that's a very important point that you bring up, right? I mean,
yeah,
which is that when you envision a future,
yeah,
you have to think without constraints, and somebody has to be bold enough to do that.
yeah,
Because I mean, everything that you're talking about, video conferencing 17, 18 years back,
yeah,
big branded retail, everything under one roof that many years back,
right,
or equity investing that many years back. I mean, these are, even today, they are sort of vanguards, right? I mean,
absolutely.
yeah, so that's a fantastic point that you bring up.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that is what like you rightly pointed out, helps other entrepreneurs think
Yeah,
without
but
constraints,
it's possible.
because they are inspired by the success of their predecessors in that sense. Okay, one is courage, the other is Karyappa, clarity. You are asking me of what are the kind of lessons that you have learned. One is that of courage. The other is that of courage of conviction, okay, which comes from clarity. Courage is one thing, courage of conviction is quite another. Okay, while you are courageous, you can be foolish,
Mm.
but courage of conviction comes from having researched enough about what you want to do, having the wherewithal, having the expertise,
Mm.
having some kind of an experience in what you want to surge ahead in.
Mm.
So that courage of conviction, followed by clarity of thought. Okay,
Mm.
so I'll give you a couple of examples of this kind of clarity. One example I already gave you of WebEx, where at that point in time they were talking about creating entrepreneurs who are sitting at their home. I mean, just imagine something 15
Yeah,
years later during these COVID times.
yeah,
We are still struggling with it, but there are these bunch of guys who are thinking that it's possible 15 years ago. Okay, when there
amazing.
was no 2G. Okay, just to put things in perspective. Okay, in the
Yeah.
times of 5G, to think of it is very
Yeah.
easy.
No, I remember WebEx especially well because I mean I see
Yeah,
we had to get on this call. It was literally 5 minutes back that I logged into this call.
yeah,
So if we had a WebEx meeting, it was around 40 minutes of planning, right?
I know.
Making sure everything was installed on your computer, making sure that there was a reasonable amount of bandwidth or whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah,
Making sure driver, this, that, everything, right?
yeah,
And then foolproofing it as well. So man,
Yeah,
yeah,
and then still be prepared to get on a phone call if all of that doesn't
if
work.
everything fails,
So
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that is one. Let me give you a couple of other examples. Okay, when we met Sachin Bansal and Vinny Bansal for the first time in our lives, that's an interesting story in itself. We'll either tell that a little later or save it for another day. But when we met them for the first time, you know, you'll not, you know, believe it. But when I asked Sachin, okay, what is it that you want to be? Unflinchingly, without thinking twice, he says, want to be the Amazon of India.
Mhm.
Okay. And they go on to become bigger than, even to this day, Flipkart is bigger than Amazon in India. Okay. So imagine the kind of clarity, or for that matter, when Bhavish Agarwal came to our office in an auto rickshaw. I love saying this because Ola did not exist in that, you know, in that era. And Bhavish came and met us because Lee Fixel of Tiger Global, who had invested in both Flipkart as well as Ola, saw the kind of work that we did for Flipkart, and then asked Bhavish to go and meet Gopi and Ravi. So he came to our office in an auto rickshaw. In the course of the conversation, we are asking him multiple questions, and he is so clear. Okay, he says that he will build the largest cab company in India without ever owning a single cab. Okay, he knew that back then, and that was the time, when the only sophisticated option that you had to
Was
book a
Meru.
cab was calling up,
Yeah,
Meru. Okay, calling up. There was no
yeah,
app, nothing. I'm saying
yeah,
smartphones hardly existed at that point in time. And here
yeah,
is this guy who will say, there will come a day when you can, on your phone, look at the cab coming towards you.
mm,
Okay, and book a cab from anywhere to anywhere. And all of this I will build without ever owning a single cab. Okay, so
fantastic.
imagine and they never deviated from those objectives. They were so purposeful, so clear.
Yeah,
They knew what they wanted to create. Each one of them. Not I just took two examples, and even when it came to constraints,
mm,
uh, you know, the same Bhavish Agarwal in that same meeting says, "Hey, you know what? We were trying to tell him, hey, what will happen? We know how these cab drivers are. They are not allowing the Merus and the easy cabs,
mm,
whether it's in Bombay or in Bangalore or in Delhi, to go near where their own coteries, their own cartels are, and
yeah,
people are getting beaten up and stuff like that." And this guy said, yeah, I'm saying if I have signed up for this game, I will fight it. But there will come a day when some of these people will be on our platform. Okay,
yeah.
so
So on
all
that
of this.
related, note, I just want to ask you. So what
Yeah,
is the? I mean, is it a very founder-centric thing, or what is it that convinces these people that it's possible? Because see, if you look at WebEx at that time, I
yeah,
mean, bandwidth was so poor,
yeah,
and Ola as well, right?
yeah,
The point that you brought up, I mean, this whole cabs and
yeah,
taxi drivers is
yeah,
a serious cartel, especially in Bombay, where Ola started
yeah,
initially.
yeah,
So, and now, I mean, if you look at it, people are so fashionably capricious in some way that they pivot from one idea to another, and it's considered, I mean, it's considered par for the course. I mean,
yeah,
I know someone who started a fintech company about 6 months back, and then I mean, at this point, they're a learning company, an edtech
yeah,
company,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, what is it that grounded these people in their conviction that this is possible?
Yeah. So, like I said, courage of conviction, which comes from deep thinking as much as deep research, and
Mm,
perhaps in some cases, to give credit where it is due, the conviction of the people who invested in them as well. And
Yeah.
both these are complementary. I'm saying one would not have happened without the other.
Yeah.
If these guys weren't as clear in their heads, I'm sure VCs would have found them out very early and would not have put money behind them.
Yeah.
But the fact that they had money also made these guys extremely strong. So to stay with that Ola example, because you liked it, Bhavish, was very clear that no matter what, he will not back out from what he was trying to create. In fact, that excited people like us to the extent that I'll tell you this interesting story.
Yeah.
Okay, in Bombay in 2012, I might get the date line wrong by 6 months or so. There was this very famous strike of cab drivers. Okay, where there would be no cabs plying in Bombay for 2-3 days. Okay, and that, if you know Bombay, apart from trains, it's the cabs that are the lifeline of Bombay, and everything turns off if there are no cabs. And when that announcement came about, okay, we called up Bhavesh and told him, you know what, there is an opportunity for us. It's a very risky thing, but if we go ahead and announce that we will ply our cabs when the regular Kali Pili taxi is going to be off the roads, that could give us extraordinary amount of visibility, but it's an extremely risky thing, is what we told him. Didn't think twice. He said, let's go ahead and make that announcement. Okay, he didn't think twice. He did not say, I will check with my investors, just wait and come back, this might potentially shut my business down. Nothing. Okay, so what happened next is every TV channel, every newspaper on its front page carried the news of how this new unheard of cab company is going to be plying cabs at a time when this cabs union have called for this thing. I'm saying people were scared for them, actually. Okay, so I mean the ability to take risks comes from the conviction that you have about your business. I mean, in parallel, let me just give you another example to illustrate that it's not just the trait of one entrepreneur but of many. Okay, when I asked Sachin, when Flipkart had introduced cash on delivery, what would happen when in certain areas where the executive goes, what if people take the product and not give the money, which was possible. Tracking and all of that was not that easy, back in 2009, 9-10. So, if people snatch away things and, things like that, I complete this question, and again, in an instant, Sachin replies, yeah, you're right. All of that is possible. It's possible that people will snatch away products. It's possible that they won't pay because the product goes into their hands first and then they need to dole out cash. All of that might happen. But if I think of that 1%, 2% possibility, I will not be able to serve 98-99% of my customers. Okay, so I will build that into my business model, is what he said. Okay, so it is that ability of these entrepreneurs to factor in the risks, not to be foolish about it. It's not like they weren't cognizant of those risks. They were cognizant of those risks, but they factored it into their business. Sometimes they leveraged it, like Bhavish did in the case of that Mumbai strike, and at other times by mitigating risks by making sure that technology came to their rescue. For example, there were instances of people who were plying in cabs and not paying money, just like people taking the product and not giving the money back. You know what these guys did at that point in time? They arrived at a technology solution where they would geofence those localities and would not serve those localities until they gained the confidence back to serve those localities. So I'm saying, so they worked a way around the constraints rather than to be bogged down by the constraints.
Yeah. No, I mean, the the execution that went into building some of these businesses was phenomenal, right? And which is what something that people don't get when they say that, hey, Flipkart is just an Amazon copy, or Ola is just an Uber copy. They solved acutely Indian problems, and they solved them in a completely different sphere, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, phenomenal execution is what I would say for each of these businesses that were built. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm saying India is a different ball game. You can say that I will build an Amazon in India, but
Mm.
if you did exactly that, you would fail and fail
Miserably, yeah.
miserably.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, in
No,
fact,
and it's not like others didn't try. I mean,
yeah,
maybe people don't recall, but there were plenty of others who tried, right?
yeah. At
And
least
didn't go beyond an app.
absolutely.
Yeah.
At least 100 e-commerce companies might have existed
Yeah,
in
yeah,
parallel,
yeah.
but
I built a few of
some
them as well.
wonderful. So some yeah, you're right. I'm saying in India you can survive
Yeah,
only if you do the Indian thing. If you factor
yeah.
in the social, economic, cultural, and moral intricacies of this country, not just
Hmm.
social, economic, and cultural.
Very interesting.
These three are easy to comprehend,
Hmm.
but moral as well. I'm saying, for example, the example that I gave you of people taking things away, and all kind of. It doesn't happen everywhere. It happens
Yeah,
maybe in pockets, but you need to account for that cultural as well. I'm saying there are certain
yeah,
things that people will not by sitting at home. There are certain things that
yeah.
people still will. For example, in our early days, Karyappa, we worked with this company called Carrot Lake. Okay,
Hmm.
while Flipkart was trying to sell books at a discount, 2010, 11 types, around 2011, 12, 13, pardon me for not getting the timelines perfect. We were working with this company called Carrot Lane. Okay. They were selling diamonds online. Okay, imagine. Huh? So while on the one hand you have a company that's selling books, initially Flipkart only sold books, other products came in later. But on the other hand, you're also trying to do PR for an
Hmm.
e-commerce company which is trying to sell diamonds worth several
Yeah.
lakhs. Okay,
Insane.
so online,
Yeah.
people were actually buying it. Okay, of course they came up with innovative models of fulfillment, because quite obviously during those days the credit card limits wouldn't allow for so much of money to be transferred. So that's the kind of monies that were involved in buying those diamonds online. Okay,
Right.
diamond, gold, a lot of jewelry online basically. But pure cut diamonds as well were being sold at the same time, and that's the beauty of India, where extremely contrasting scenarios coexist. Okay,
Yeah.
even in 2009-10, India was not just about discount sales. It was also about diamond merchanting online.
So, Ravi, for each of the stories that we discussed, right, branding and communication has been central to that story. I mean, in fact, I mean,
Yeah,
if we look back at the 10, 15 years of their existence, that is one thing that we remember, right? What
yeah,
they're known for.
yeah,
But often founders and even marketers think of PR as a luxury, right?
yeah.
People don't realize that your reputation precedes your product. People hear about you before they experience you, right?
Mm, mm,
Um, and PR is central to help you craft this narrative as such.
yeah,
Bill Gates himself has said that, if I was down to my last dollar, I would spend it on public relations.
yeah,
Maybe this is, colored because of Microsoft of the 90s, but still it holds.
yeah,
Uh, so why do you think this stepmotherly treatment to PR in general, or do you
yeah,
notice that?
yeah.
And, when should a startup prioritize PR and communications?
Yeah. So let me blame it on Bill Gates again. You said that Bill Gates said that he will put his last dollar on PR.
Every last dollar.
He should have actually put his first dollar on PR because, like you rightly pointed out, uh, you know, your reputation precedes your product or service, and if that is the case, then it's the first dollars that need to go into PR. Okay, I'll tell you the issue in uh, um, you know when it comes to PR in India. Okay, it was either seen as a good to have or a great to have,
Mm.
or it was seen as something that will help you, in the times of a crisis and stuff like that. And it was also believed to be dependent on the power of a network. Okay, people believe that, oh, these PR agencies came with huge networks of
Yeah.
media, and they can help you either get a story or to stop a story. Okay,
Mm.
so that's actually the notion that companies like ours challenged, where we said, let's we'll tell our clients, let's assume that I don't know any media person. Okay. Hmm?
Which is again a
Because
very unconventional thing to say to a client, right? Because that is
absolutely,
the one thing that they expect from a PR firm, which is media
yeah,
relations.
absolutely, absolutely. In another day, in another world, okay, not with new age businesses, but with some of the older world businesses a decade ago. Okay, many times we have been shown the door for saying things like this. I'm saying, yeah, I mean, let's assume that I don't know any media. Let's assume that the network is common to everybody. Okay,
Mm.
which is the truth actually. The network is common to everybody. Everybody has the same names, the same phone numbers,
Mm.
and rarely do you actually go and meet these guys and have a cup of coffee with them. And you can't have a cup of coffee with 5,000 people that you know,
Mm.
because a simple calculation will tell you that it will take about 15 years for you to have a cup of coffee if you are having a cup of coffee with each one, if you have to finish that entire list. So it's foolhardy, but we don't think like that logically, isn't it? We somehow
Mm.
presume that you know there is this other party who can work his network and get me coverage. So like I said, that's the notion that we challenged, where we said we are in the business of making your proposition compelling, relevant, and interesting. Okay, so that's the business of PR. Okay, doesn't matter who I know, who I don't know. If I don't know somebody, it's
Mm.
not very easy to get their number and name
Mm.
and reach out to them. But the minute we start representing you, if we become you in that process, and if we have the capability to convince that other guy to look at the world from your perspective and what benefits thereof lie for his audiences, because we need to be mindful of the fact that media doesn't care about your audience, they only care about their audience. They are a commercial entity, they are there to do a job for themselves. So we tried telling people that, but the best way to convince somebody is by showing and telling. And thankfully we got some good wins in our early days, and after a while, just to say Flipkart and Ola, among some of the other names that we had, became enough. But until that point,
Mm.
it was very hard to convince people that you can actually do very good PR
Mm.
without really knowing anybody personally in the media. Of course, you need to know them as professionals, you need to respect them as professionals, you need to be very familiar with the kind of work that they are doing.
Mm.
But that doesn't mean that they need to become your buddies. I'm saying they are professionals who are there to do the best job that they can, just like you. Okay, and that's the approach that we took. That's why when we have consulting in our name, when we call ourselves, Aim High Consulting, we are very serious about the consulting part.
Mm.
And that's what perhaps helped us. So coming back to your point, reputation precedes a product or a service. And uh, many people, fortunately, in today's times, have started to understand that. But of
Mm.
course the lesson was learned for a different reason, from a different perspective, because there were a lot of enterprises who played the valuation game, and they understood that it was important for them to be there in the media if they had to be valued better than some of the others. Some of them did it because they wanted to erect entry barriers around the spaces that they wanted to operate in, which was easier done through PR. It's not so much the money that is involved in PR that becomes a deterrent, Karyappa, for PR. There isn't too much money involved. I'm saying what you would spend if you would advertise versus what you would spend, if you are paying a PR agency. Okay, it's worlds apart actually.
Yeah.
Very very less.
No,
To be very
and the
honest with
sheer
you.
longevity of any PR activity, right? So
Yeah.
it's
No, no.
consumable over a period of time.
You're right. But the point I was trying to make was
Yeah.
PR takes a lot more effort than some of the other things. Okay, let's say advertising. You give an advertising agency a mandate, they'll come and show you some options, and they will tell you what budgets you need to spend. Then you will tweak the budgets. Then you will say, okay, you make the logo bigger. This needs to look like that, and you if you have the monies, you can just be out there. Here, when it comes to PR, even if you have the money, since it's a third party that is taking a call on you, okay, since it's an entity which has an editor sitting on the other side, which is taking a call on you, your messaging needs to be so much sharper, your storytelling needs to be so good. Okay, and like I said, you need to tell the story from the point of view of your media's TG. Okay, all of that requires investment of mind space.
Yeah.
And that is available only at a huge premium. Okay, so premium not just in terms of money, but premium in terms of resource availability, time availability, and all of that. That perhaps is a bigger constraint. Many will not admit to it because they will not say, hey, no, I'm not capable of thinking so much, or I'm busy chasing my own tail, and so I will not do this. Many people will be reluctant to say that. So there might be other excuses that might come in, but more often than not, it's not the money, but the ability to craft a message that is convincing enough, because it's easy to tell your story to people in your own ecosystem, isn't it? I'm saying, because you can use jargons, you can the minute you quickly tell somebody, because there's a common frame of reference, that guy is more likely to get what you're saying. But when you are talking to your audiences, okay, when I say audiences, your consumers or your prospective employees, you need to start first by painting the background, and then you should slowly start painting the picture, which means the frame of reference is not naturally easily available to you. You need to create that. Okay, and that calls for a lot of patience, that calls for a lot of diligent work, and that sometimes is a bigger constraint than the monies itself.
Yeah. No, that's a very relevant point, because a lot of the times people don't answer that central question of why someone should publish you, right? So why are you interesting? I mean, I think that is a bigger investment than any of the monies that you mentioned, which purely on ROI, I think it pays off, right?
Yeah.
Now,
Very true, Karyappa. Let me just add a sentence there. Many people look at PR as a thing of entitlement. All right, my competitors are getting written about. Why shouldn't I be getting written about? Okay, or they will say, hey, I've worked in some of the best companies around the world. Now I am coming to India and I'm starting this company. They better write about me, kind of a thing. They look at it with a sense of entitlement. Unfortunately, media is a huge leveler. I'm saying media, and as a consequence of that, your audiences are extremely smart people who are sitting in the seat of judgment on you, and they will not accord you any more success than what is due to you. Okay, they will only give you as much success as you deserve. So that is something that we need to be mindful of. No point in feeling entitled about anything.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. So each of the stories that we also spoke about, right? Couple of elements to it. So one is that the founders at the center of the story, right? And the fact that they were able to craft a beautiful narrative around it, central narrative around it. So what are some storytelling tips that you would offer to founders or operators who are listening in order for them to put their story forward and make that compelling as possible?
Yeah. So
how can in essence, how can a founder or an operator be a good spokesperson for the brand?
Yeah. So I keep saying this, Karyappa. The only way to leverage PR for your business is to have the ability to tell your story as though you're saying it for the first time in your life every time. Okay.
Mm.
So, not easy at all. It might sound like, yeah, obviously, I'm saying if I'm a founder, I am passionate
No,
about
no,
my business.
I
Therefore,
understand.
I am.
I
I'm
understand.
able to tell my
Yeah,
story with conviction each time.
yeah,
No, it's not, because it's easy for you to tell your story to your VCs, prospective VCs, because there's a golden pot at the end of that rainbow.
no,
It's easy to tell your
yeah,
story to perhaps somebody in a B2B scenario where you are doing an engineering sale or an industrial sale too, because like I said earlier, there's a ready frame of reference available.
correct.
But when you are telling your story to a journalist or to your through him to your end TG, it's very difficult, because many times you are met with a blank stare. Okay, somebody is looking at you, not understanding much. Okay, it's very difficult, to speak to anybody who's giving you a blank stare.
Mm.
And when you realize that he may not be on the same wavelength, he may not
That's
have the
a
same frame of reference as you
yeah,
do. So that becomes a big constraint, big barrier
huge constraint.
to communication, and that stops you from being passionate enough to tell your story. Passion is not very easy to call upon. It's a much abused word. Everybody says that they are passionate about whatever they do. Most people aren't, which is the truth. Because if you are doing something for a motivation that is extrinsic,
Mm.
then sometimes you need to feel passion.
Mm.
uh, Number one. Number two, even if you are
just
passionate,
to just to pick up on what you said,
yeah,
that's such an important point, because I mean, if I look at my own journey, right, I think I became a better marketer after pitching my story to people who did not know the product or even the space, as you mentioned. Because
mm,
I come from the world of enterprise software,
yeah,
and to me, CRM, Salesforce automation, or any of those things are sort of okay. I mean, I take it for granted when I pitch to let's say our prospects, that they already
yeah,
know those things, right?
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, the first few times that I pitched, folks in the media, and I got that
yeah,
blank stare, I
yeah,
realized how fundamentally off I was, right?
absolutely,
And
yeah,
then I started pitching from the perspective of the end user,
yeah,
right? So our product is consumed by salespeople,
yeah,
and instead of starting that, hey, we operate in the CRM/SFA space,
yeah,
I would start with have you done any sales in your life, right?
yeah, yeah,
Sales is a very hard thing, right? 30% of salespeople are let go every year. There are two modes of dealing with salespeople. You either give them incentives or you give them a stick,
yeah,
right? Here is an
yeah,
alternate approach. And
yeah,
when I brought that approach, and it
yeah,
took many iterations, it took many blank stares to understand that maybe we should shift that frame of reference.
yeah,
It became a lot better, and I got better at my storytelling as well. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
You're right, Karyappa, because at the end of the day, we are all a sum total of all the experiences that we have.
absolutely.
Okay, and therefore we operate on a number of presumptions. Okay,
Correct.
and unknowingly our language becomes
Biased.
jargonized. The way we communicate with others is with the expectation that that other guy who's sitting across the table is my equal.
Mm.
Okay, we don't operate with the assumption that, hey, he could be much bigger and better than me, or he may not know as much as I do in the space that I am operating in.
Mm.
Okay, that's the biggest barrier to cross, actually, to be empathetic about the position that the other person is sitting in,
Absolutely.
or the limited frame of reference with which he could come from on this subject. And as a result of that, to ensure that your tone, your mannerism, the way in which you tell your story
Mm.
isn't condescending towards that guy. Okay,
Absolutely.
so that's not an easy skill at all. That is one, to strip yourself of all of those presumptions,
And biases.
is by presumptions, biases, perceptions that you might carry, which are unfounded. So some of those things are a big constraint. Also, the other thing that you need to factor in is that, especially in India, media might not be as specialized about your space as much as you like it to be. Okay.
Yeah.
Of course, today the situation has changed. In 13 years of aim high, I have seen that at least in the latter half, media has become a lot more specialized than it was. But still, I'm saying a person of a much younger profile who is covering a much wider range of companies, you cannot expect that guy to sit in front of you and then know everything about your business. That is why I said, to again let go of that sense of entitlement about what you do becomes extremely important, which means you need to tell your story from the beginning each time. And that's the, if I have to just give one tip, it is that I'm saying, to be prepared to tell your story as though you're saying it for the first time in your life every time. No matter how big you think of yourself to be, you might be forced to come back to that position each time you are presented with a media opportunity. You need to tell your story from the beginning.
Right. Right. And when you work with founders or marketers, I mean, what is the sort of expectations that you set to these people in terms of what they can get out of this PR effort, right? Because I'm sure, I mean, people might come up to you and say, hey, can I get coverage in, let's say, the Times of India or Economic Times?
Yeah.
Here is a 3-month engagement, and these are the number of mentions I require, and interviews and product or customer stories, etc., etc., right? So what is the sort of reasonable expectation that you sort of set with them?
Yeah, we don't set reasonable expectations. We set unreasonable expectations. So I'll tell you why I'm saying we set unreasonable expectations. You said 3-month project. If somebody says 3-month project to me, I'm not game, because I work only on minimum 2-year contracts. If somebody is not signing a 2-year contract with me, I'm not working with them. Period. Okay. We don't do projects, we don't do assignments, we don't do anything that is construed as one-off. Okay. Why? Because we believe that PR is not a tap that you can turn on and turn off when you don't need. Okay. We believe that it needs to be viewed as a part of your business function, as an ongoing thing, because you are just like you spoke of setting expectations. Just like I'm setting expectations with my client, I'm also going to the media and setting expectations there, where I am telling them, hey, here is this new proposition which will keep your TG in good stead. And then suddenly 3 months later, if I say, hey, no, you know what, don't ask me about this particular client because I'm not working with them anymore. Okay, it's such a miserable scenario. I don't want to be in scenarios like that. So we do only long-term contracts with clients, which also means, that serves as some kind of a process of elimination, because only funded startups then will be able to work with you, not some of the very, very early stage startups and stuff like that. But we are okay with that. I'm saying everything comes with a trade-off, and we are okay with this trade-off. Some of the other expectations that we set, to answer your question, is to say, you know what, we are only your advocates in the media. Okay. We do not have control over media. Okay. If you ask me how many stories will I get this quarter, my answer is, and it's a reasonable answer to give, as much as it sounds unreasonable. Okay. I don't know. Okay. I don't know. But this is what we will together plan for. Okay. In fact, we have a 1-month-long induction process with our clients, where together we sit and draft out a plan. Okay. And therefore a lot of tempering of expectations happens during that phase. We, more often than not, because it is such a detailed and diligent process of a month, going on to a 2-year kind of an engagement, the chances of success multiplies. But expectations are always set very low, and together we experience the joy of exceeding those expectations. Because at the end of the day, I'm your advocate. I'm trying to make the best case possible in the court of media for you. I am only like your lawyer. Okay, I am not sitting on the editorial boards of those companies to tell you exactly what the headline is going to be, where the story is going to be positioned,
No,
stuff like that.
I guess where I was coming from is like if a founder or a marketer has to budget for PR, right?
Yeah.
How does he or she budget for PR?
Yeah. See, horses
I'm
for
also I'm
courses.
also
Yeah.
I'm also coming from a very like a startup space, right?
Understood.
Which is that I'm not a large company that has X amount of budget that has to be spent on a yearly basis. I
Correct.
have a greenfield of opportunities, so I have
Yeah.
like X amount of money, and I can
Yeah.
either deploy it in, let's say, PR,
Yeah.
or let's say advertising, or plenty of other options.
Yeah.
So if I were to budget for a PR activity specifically,
Yeah.
how do I go about budgeting for that?
Yeah. So if I knew what that X was, then it would be easy for me to give the answer. But I know where you're
Yeah.
coming from, Karyappa. PR is free, isn't it? In that sense, because what is PR? PR is generating unpaid publicity in the media. Okay, so to that extent, it is free. Now, what do you pay for in PR? The quality of thinking, either of the intermediary or of your internal resource. Okay,
Correct.
so that's what you need to budget for. Otherwise, PR is free. I'm saying media is writing about your proposition because of the social outcomes that are there of your commercial enterprise. Otherwise, they wouldn't write about you. They are writing because what you are doing is of some value to their target audiences, where you are either educating them, or you are entertaining them, or you are informing them, or you are putting some money back into their pockets, or you are helping them lead a healthier and happier life. One or two of those
They're useful.
combination. So PR is free. Let's first put that on the table. Now, you need to sharpen the saw. You need to ensure that the story that you are taking to the media will result in the kind of positive outcomes that you desire. Then the quality of input needs to be that much better. That is what costs money. Okay, and that costs money everywhere, whether it's advertising or this thing. So the cost of PR to put it rhetorically, is actually zero, except for the cost of the intermediary, and that you can pick and choose. If you are very confident that you are capable of crafting the message out the way it is palatable to media and its audiences, then you perhaps may not have to spend too much in your very early stages, because if it's just the names and numbers of the media people that you need, that is available open source everywhere. So it can be very close to zero in that sense. However, as you progress to your next stage, as you will have so many other things on your plate, and you cannot risk inconsistent messaging, you cannot leave many things to chance. You're better off signing in experts to do the job for you, while the end PR is still free. In that sense,
No,
you are spending on the resources for sharpening the saw.
No, having done this exercise myself, I know it's a non-trivial activity, and it's something that can very quickly get deprioritized. Because you have to balance so many other things, and not doing it for a while also hurts you, right? Because I believe every product or service at some point gets commoditized. You can't be unique in a market for long, right? And only thing that can save you at that point of time is what you invest in your brand. So how does a founder, how does a marketer measure outcomes from media? So one thing is to very simply look at let's say the space that the mentions that one has in media. But any other way you suggest that people can measure outcomes from media and PR?
The best way to measure outcomes from any communication activity, the best way, ideal way, is by doing A/B research. Okay, what was there before, and what has this communication activity resulted in, irrespective of whether it's PR or any form of communication. It could be advertising, it could be digital marketing, whatever else it is. But that is expensive, extremely expensive. You cannot really do an A/B research after every communication activity. Therefore, there are compromised set of things that are there. In PR, the ideal way for me to measure the effectiveness of communication is by checking for delivery of key messages. Okay, on the PR side, checking for delivery of key messages. How do you do that? Okay, you already have an agreed set of key messages, and you map anything that has come out in the media based on the plan that you would have mutually agreed upon. Anything that has come out in the media, you try and map against the key messages. Has at least one of the 2-3 key messages that we have agreed upon, has it been delivered? Okay, if it's been delivered, at least you have been honest to your objective, and it is getting translated into some outcomes. That is one way to measure. But the real measurement, I feel, should happen on the client side, where the client is checking and reporting back to the PR consulting company on what is therefore the resultant uptick that is happening to the business. Many times this measurement happens, key message delivery, because I'm saying the party who's receiving the money is always accountable for the money that he has got. So he will come back and always report on, hey, you know what, these are the key messages and this is how it is getting delivered. But the party who's paying the money, who needs to be more responsible, ends up abdicating the responsibility of not tracking for what happened. Therefore, okay, the coverage up here. So did it result in more people coming to my website? Did it result in more inquiries? Did it result in lead generation? I mean, many times that is left unreported. So it calls for commitment on both sides to ensure that PR outcomes specifically, but communication outcomes in general, for that to be tracked, both parties need to be very serious about it. You said PR is not a trivial activity, and you realize that. But to be honest with you, because many people operate with a sense of entitlement, and I say it with a deep sense of regret, without any anger, but with regret, I say it, that unfortunately people don't realize the amount of money that they are saving as a result of getting free coverage, and therefore end up sort of trivializing PR. They think that it's okay not to track.
Yeah, there's nothing free in this world, right? Everything comes at a cost. So
Absolutely.
no free lunches at all. I mean, we thought social media was free, but we are only now realizing the cost on our data and our privacy and everything, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, one way I have seen, one thing I have seen as a decent measurement metric is to just simply ask your customers or prospects, right? Just do a simple sentiment analysis on, hey, I mean, did you happen to see that mention of mine? Yes, no. And if you did, what do you think about that? Whatever, right? It's also a good reality check for you as well, in terms of how your product is doing versus how your brand is doing. So yeah.
So I have my reservations on that. I'll be candid with you.
Sure.
Informal research has its perils. People are always very nice to each other.
Of course.
And that sometimes can be an issue. Okay, so in a more structured, more formal research,
more formal, of course. If you could probably send out a survey or something of that sort,
which is what I'm saying. Like I said, the ideal thing to do is to commission a survey or a study to understand what happened before. I mean, what was the state before and what was the state later. But that's expensive, unfortunately.
Yeah, that is for sure. So we spoke about some detail about how media folks are and so on, right? So what is the ideal relationship between a PR person and a media person?
Yeah, so
when I say media person, I mean a journalist, reporter, etc.
Yeah, so it's a complementary ecosystem, isn't it? I'm saying not just between the PR professional and the media professional, but also between client, PR, and media. It's a fairly complementary relationship. But unfortunately, sometimes you know, lack of respect for the other professional
Mm.
results in scenarios where you run the other person down. Okay,
From
that
both
doesn't
ends.
happen. Huh?
From both ends.
Yeah, from both ends. I'm saying from both ends. Sometimes from client to PR agency, sometimes from media to a PR consulting company, and behind the backs, PR consulting company versus both the client and the media happens all the time, and that happens because of lack of respect. For the professional. I'm saying if everybody is doing the best job that they can, okay, if they are true to what they are supposed to deliver, if the PR professional is acting as a sane filter who's enabling the flow of information from the client to the media, after understanding what the media professional wants from that client to ensure that his story comes out good. Okay, if
Mm.
that's the job that the PR professional is doing, then there is nothing to worry about. I'm saying if you have done your homework well, and if
Yeah.
you are capable of articulating, what your client needs, both clearly as well as succinctly, then there is no need to worry. I'm saying at the end of the day, there are only two things to communication. Any communication, isn't it? All that you need to know is you know brevity and accuracy.
Mm.
Okay. If that is ensured
Mm.
on the part of the PR professional, and on the part of media as well, because he's the media professional is also constrained for space. So even there, brevity and accuracy play a huge role.
Yeah.
So if all of us are doing the best job that they can, then it can be a wonderful environment of mutual respect.
Yeah.
Okay, ideal scenario. And I think in today's times, in some quarters it exists and in some quarters it doesn't. But that happens, I guess, in every profession, and
Yeah.
communication profession is not any exception.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's a great point as well. What you brought up, right? Which is respect is such an important thing because uh, see, if you're in either of the professions, if you're in PR or if you're in media, you're going to be
Yeah,
dealing with each other for 10, 20, 30 years, right?
yeah,
You guys are wedded to each other. So
yeah,
you better develop and cultivate respect for each other's work,
yeah,
understanding of each other's priorities, concerns, etc., and invest in each other's growth.
yeah,
Because hey, I mean, what are you going to do? By shortchanging someone now, if you're going to need that person for 10 or 20 or 30 years,
yeah,
right? So yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those relationships where you have to be very tightly coupled.
yeah.
And I
You're
mean
right.
trust and credibility as a central sort of a
Yeah.
bedrock of that relationship, more than any favors or any of those other sort of things.
Absolutely, you're right. You're right. I'll qualify that just a little bit more by saying professional respect. You don't need to be
Correct, correct.
personal friends. You don't need to cultivate each other. Okay, so this is the kind of language that unfortunately got embedded into Indian PR over years. Okay,
Mm,
let me plant this story. Let me cultivate this journalist kind of
mm,
thing. Very silly. I'm saying you
mm.
should not be doing
Yeah,
things like that in a professional relationship. Okay,
yeah.
if you're doing your job well,
Mm,
and if you are helping the other person do his job well as well, then both of you are being professional.
yeah,
Professional respect is about knowing what that person writes about, what triggers interest in that person, knowing
precisely.
and
Yeah,
to ensure that your pitch is aligned with that and you are not wasting that person's time by talking something that is completely unconnected. So that's what I really mean
absolutely.
by professional respect.
Yeah,
Personally, you can still have your differences or you can still be friends, but that's only incidental.
yeah, yeah, precisely. So
Yeah,
media itself has changed so much over the years, and I believe that we can do a separate podcast itself by itself, on everything that's changed in the
yeah,
media for better or for worse, or
yeah,
whichever way you look at it, right? My one question is, media responsibility in terms of reporting. uh, often we see that it oscillates between mindless cheerleading or crushing cynicism, right?
Yeah.
You either have stories about X person raised this much funding, this, that, whatever of that sort, without any consequence of what that means to the general
Yeah.
audience, or you have silly gossip stories about who divorced whom and things to that effect, right? And here I'm talking specifically about tech reporting and startup reporting and so on.
Yeah.
What do you think is the media's responsibility in reporting the facts as they are, and also adding perspective to it?
Yeah. So, like you said, both mindless cheerleading and mindless cynicism can have its ill effects. Media, by definition, needs to be neutral, needs to be objective, needs to be well researched, and you know, as far as possible, dispassionate. Okay.
Mm.
So it is reporting at the end of the day, isn't it? So reporting has an underlying layer of being factual. Okay. If that is all that media does, it is more than enough. Thankfully, in when it comes to business reporting, when it comes to tech reporting, the kind of reporting that is consequential to companies like ours, I think media has stayed true to its original objectives. The kind of other form of cheerleading or cynicism and all of that comes into play either when it comes to your political kind of reporting, or when it comes to your movie reporting, and those kind of things, celebrity reporting, some of the other lifestyle, fashion, that kind of stuff is where you will see some of this other forms of reporting. When it comes to business reporting, I feel media has no choice but to be but to have professionals who are fairly thorough in those spaces reporting. And we don't encounter too much of either cheerleading or cynicism, though we would be happy if there is a little bit of not mindless but mindful cheerleading, where you are conscious of why you are supporting the cause that you are supporting. Because media, as much as it has its independence, independent take on things, because their audiences are deeply embedded into the society, owes you know responsibility to that society. And there is no harm if they are crusading for the kind of causes that will further the interests of the society to which they are playing to. So to that extent, I am canvassing for a little bit of mindful cheerleading. Mindful cheerleading also will come with it being circumspect when it comes to mindlessness. Okay, so that sort of balances out itself, as long as you're doing what you're doing mindfully, and more importantly conscientiously. But I think, a lot of that you can see already in when it comes to a business kind of media. I don't have too many complaints there.
Yeah. Also, we are living in the era of decentralization, right? So platforms have become, numerous at this point of time. Arguably, somebody who has maybe 100,000 followers on Twitter is a media platform by themselves. And I think I quite subscribe to what Balaji Srinivasan, who's a venture capitalist based in the Valley, says, that every person and every company is a media voice, should treat themselves as a media voice or a broadcasting company by themselves, and create that narrative about them, because I think we are living in that era.
Yeah, you're right. Everybody is a voice onto themselves, and behave like media companies themselves. But we must understand the distinction that exists between that and what we call mass media. The distinction is very simple. Okay, when somebody else is talking about you, it's a third party endorsement of who you are and is therefore far more credible than you talking about yourself or your own, to use your phrase, cheerleaders talking about you, the people who comment, and are always applauding, those kind of people talking about you. There is a big distinction between that, which is where source credibility, okay, the credibility of the media company that is writing about you, or the people who are endorsing your viewpoint, that matters most, and that is not to be wished away even in these times of social media, where you have those platforms available, you have your audiences available. But when you are looking at you talking about yourself, okay, I'm saying, if we look at how much we trust a company that has put out a communication, which is like an ad, basically, isn't it? I'm saying, when you are talking about yourself, it's like an ad. But a PR is something where, because of the third party endorsement value, it becomes 10 times more credible. As long as we understand that distinction, we can make the most of both. So, and it's also a wise thing, just to add, it's also a wise thing to put that third party tone even in the communication that you are putting out to your audiences, rather than being self-laudatory and be cheering yourself. If you are assuming a slightly more neutral tone, maybe you will be trusted a little bit more, but never as much as if a third party media is writing about you. So
no, it's I come at it from a perspective of a useful tool to influence your narrative more than anything else. So
absolutely. Yeah.
All right,
You
Ravi.
can
So
count
let's
that also amongst the free media that you have at your disposal. Yeah.
of course. So Ravi, let's switch the pace a little bit and do what we call a rapid fire round.
Sure.
So short and interesting answers to the following questions. I think we spoke about a few of these. The best founding story according to you, from
Very
a PR
tough.
perspective.
From a PR perspective, very difficult to put my finger onto one. But if you ask me which is the one that helped us the most, I will still say Flipkart.
Okay. The best thing about
sorry, it's rapid fire. I'm mindful of that, but what we did with when it comes to evangelizing cash on delivery for Flipkart is something that I'll put right at the top.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that was pretty revolutionary, actually.
Yeah.
So the best thing about PR?
Yeah, like I said, never a dull day in your life.
Okay. Most frustrating thing about PR?
You have very little control over outcomes, but you have to pretend like you have a lot of control over it.
How like life? Yeah. So
it's so much like life. Yeah, you're right.
Best thing about working with startups?
Yeah, they keep you energized. They keep you young. If not for them, I would have had a lot more gray hair in my beard. The head would have remained the same.
So most frustrating thing about startups, working with startups?
Yeah, so uncertainties that come with working with a startup. I'm saying you could potentially be doing the best job that you can and getting all your results, but for want of funding, for change in markets, for the pivots that they might have to forcibly do, they might even fold up. So their business uncertainty will have a bearing on your business uncertainty as well.
Yeah. Best thing about working with the media?
Yes, so you're up to date as much as the media is.
Okay. Most frustrating thing about working with the media?
Yeah, sometimes, like I said, since you have a commitment to the client on the one side, and on the other side, you do not have control over outcomes. Okay, what you wish could happen and the gap between that and what is actually happening can sometimes be frustrating, and just like life, like you said.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite journalist?
No, like I said, we are agnostic to the media in that sense.
Okay, but you should have a favorite founder at least, right?
Yeah, I have a business to run. And therefore I won't call out names.
Either
Yeah.
of them.
Yeah, I
Okay.
have a lot of favorite founders. My current favorite founders are those in which we are investing. Both Gopi and I do a lot of active angel investing,
Okay.
and I will. My current favorites would be those companies in which we would have angel invested at. At early stages. There's a portfolio of at least 20-25 companies, and please don't ask
Interesting.
me to pick a favorite amongst those.
Sure. So we've been in a lockdown for about on off for about three plus months now. The best lockdown slash quarantine hack that you've discovered?
Uh, uh, you mean a personal hack or a
Personal
professional
hack.
hack? Huh?
Personal hack.
Yeah, yeah. So in these COVID, see, the work is happening as usual. I'm saying you know, um, uh, an
So
active business
maybe
like.
I think this is also an interesting point for you to describe your schedule, Ravi, because I think it's unusual, right? I mean, you live out of Mysore but operate out of everywhere, basically.
Yeah,
Or used to
yeah.
at least.
Yeah, correct. So a lot has changed because otherwise a normal week would be where I would be flying to a couple of cities at least, apart from visits to Bangalore. But I've been locked down in Mysore for the last 4 months. I'm saying this is after 1999. Okay, 21 years ago. This is the first time that I have slept on the same bed for so many days. The one that you see right behind me.
Right.
Okay, so otherwise, it would be at least on 3-4 different beds every week. I'm saying that will scandalize me, but but that's the truth of my life. At airports all the time, kind of a life. To a life that is much saner in these times. So it uh, uh, it has given me a lot of time to do a lot of physical activity, walks. The best hack, okay, to answer your question is since you are working from home, and if you can figure out a quiet place where you could be walking, keep
Yeah.
walking while you are talking, which is what I've been
Yeah.
doing during this lockdown times, to the extent that many times, if I'm on audio calls in the first half of the day, I would have completed at least 10 kilometers. So I keep joking with my wife, see, look at the amount of work that I have done today. It's about 10 kilometers. Okay. So work measured by the length of the walks that you are taking while being on calls, which
Yeah.
is having this wonderful side effect of good health.
Yeah. I do that as well. So I don't take my calls. I mean, apart from the podcasts that we're recording, I don't
Yeah,
take
video
calls.
calls. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. What book or books are you reading right now? What would you recommend to the audience?
Yeah, so to be honest with you, I'm not reading any books now. In fact, I am writing a couple of books. I'm writing a lot of stuff. Actually, I've written a good amount of stuff during. Like you mentioned during the introduction, I write a fair bit, especially in Kannada, and some of my stuff is about to be published. The things that I wrote on during these COVID times will be coming out in the form of a couple of books. I'm working on that during the weekends. Of course,
Hmm.
I'm saying I wish I had a little more time. Some of it would have fructified by now, but I'm sure in the next 3-4 weeks there will uh, hopefully be two, but most certainly be one book that will be out, and I guess I that will make me happy that I have made the most of these times.
Fantastic. Do you listen to a lot of podcasts?
So I do listen to a lot of audio books and not so much to podcasts, but I think I should make that a habit from now. Since people like you have been doing such a great job of it. Yes, but I have listened to all your podcasts.
Oh, thanks so much. Thanks so much. So, all right, Ravi, we're almost at the end of the podcast. This has been a fascinating conversation, and often when we catch up, I mean, it goes into, I really forget the minutes and hours, right?
Yeah.
We have so much to talk about and delve into depth about a lot of these complex things.
Yeah.
So to end the podcast, I want to ask you, what are you optimistic about in this post-COVID world that we're living in?
Yeah. So, like we keep hearing, COVID has been a leveler. The world will settle into a new normal, and all of that. I really hope it turns out that way. Okay. So, not wanting to be skeptical, but, I feel at the end of the day, human beings, for a wide variety of reasons, all of us are self-centered individuals. I'm saying we tend to think of ourselves as the center of the universe and then operate accordingly. I, hope that as a result of what the world has gone through and what some of us have gone through individually, okay, I hope that some of our ahankaras, okay, are settled a little bit more, and deal with other people with a lot more empathy. I'm saying that is what I will hope for. Okay, I don't know if truly there will be a huge transformational effect in the way people will live their lives and stuff like that. I am, fearing that there will more be a spring effect, which will make people bounce back. There will be times when, not in the distant future, where the consumerism will be back to what it was. Everything will be more or less the same. It will not be a completely unfamiliar world that we will live in. But I just hope that even if all of that is going to stay, if we are a little more empathetic about each other, okay, if we can put ourselves in the other person's shoes for a few minutes before passing a judgment on that person, then we would have walked into a completely different world, even if it otherwise is seemingly the same.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I do hope that this is sort of a pause and reflect moment for all of us, to not just stay indoors, but also look inside of ourselves and really reflect on, what are the values that we want to further, right? Ravi, thank you so much for your time. This was a very, very, very good conversation, fascinating conversation. A lot of things that we unpacked around PR, media, startups, growth, marketing, etc., which I'm sure will be extremely beneficial to all of our listeners. Thank you everyone for tuning in.
Thank you so much, Karyappa. I enjoyed this a lot. I did not realize that almost 1 hour 40 minutes have flown past. If you had asked me to guess, I would say 20-30 minutes. So wonderful. It helped me introspect a lot on many things that otherwise I would not have thought of, and that, I think, has been the essence of all your podcasts, where your line of questioning is so sharp, but at the same time, I'm reusing the word, very empathetic. You are helping people. You are helping in bringing the best out of people, and all the best to you too, Karim.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ravi. Really, really appreciate that. That means a lot coming from you. Thank you everyone for tuning in. The podcast will be available on all popular platforms, of course, YouTube. And if you like this episode, then don't forget to share and subscribe with your friends and family. Stay safe and take care.